What's up, guys? It's MB Boxing. I just finished up watching Jared Anderson versus Charles Martin, and this was a 10-rounder in the heavyweight division. And this fight was Saturday, July 1st from the Huntington Center in Toledo, Ohio. And this fight was broadcasted on ESPN, ESPN Plus, or on the ESPN app. And in this fight, Jared Anderson was able to get a unanimous decision victory over Charles Martin. So I had this bout scored 98-91 in favor of Jared Anderson. And the three judges had this bout 98-91 and 99-90 twice, all in Anderson's favor. So this was the first ever fight where Jared Anderson went past 6 rounds and went the full distance. A very actually solid performance from the loser in this fight, Charles Martin. He fought a very, very good fight, contrary to what myself and a lot of people probably would have thought. He was a very big underdog going into this one, and he went the distance and actually hurt Jared Anderson a few times. So much less is this impressive performance from Anderson, who did win, but I think it's a much more impressive performance from Martin, who was going to this fight, where almost like 90% of the people were picking an early KO for Anderson. But just to go through this fight and sort of go round by round and how I had it scored. The first 2 rounds, I thought that Jared Anderson won pretty clear. Martin primarily was fighting on the outside, trying to counter Jared Anderson with some shots. But Anderson in those first 2 rounds were pretty patient. He was just much more active. Not really much was going on in the first 2. Then in the third round, after Charles Martin was having a pretty solid round, he was doing nicely on the outside, landing some left hands. Right in the last 10 seconds, Martin got caught with a check right hook over the head that sent him down to the canvas. It was a perfectly placed shot from Anderson. Caught Martin when he was throwing a punch, and it was a nice knockdown. And that was a 10-8 round for Anderson, but Martin was doing pretty well in that round leading up. The fourth round, again, was very similar to the first 2, where just Anderson was stalking his prey. In Martin, he was just stalking him. Martin was trying to stay on the outside, landing some jabs, but it was primarily Anderson coming forward, landing the better shots in that round. However, the 5th round was a very big round for Charles Martin. This round, Martin definitely won. He landed a big 1-2 that actually wobbled Jared Anderson. He jumped on Anderson towards the end of that round, started throwing big shots on him, and it was a very big round for Charles Martin, hurting Jared Anderson. And this was really the first time in that 5th round where Anderson went through some type of adversity in his career. And it was really the first ever round that Anderson ever lost. Then in the 6th round, it was a pretty quiet round. Anderson came back jabbing. Same thing in round 7. Anderson was jabbing. And in the 8th round, the thing with Martin in this fight, he did look a little bit sloppy in the later rounds, considering he was probably really, really tired. But, I mean, he did come into this fight on 2 weeks' notice, so big props to him, like I said before. And then, like I said before, round 6, 7, and 8, Anderson was sort of just jabbing Martin coming forward. But the problem with Jared Anderson, I didn't see a killer instinct. Going into this fight, he was really built up as the man who's going to go in there and knock people out, really a killer in the ring. But he really didn't show that, and didn't really show his power to be that phenomenal, I guess you could say. Because Martin, although he's got good power himself, he isn't really seen as someone who could really take a punch that great, considering what we saw in his prior losses. But, I mean, Jared Anderson was hitting Martin with some good shots. Martin took them. Maybe it's a sentiment to Martin's chin, but, I mean, Jared Anderson wasn't really hurting Martin. I mean, really, Martin hurt Anderson more times in this fight than Anderson hurt Martin. Martin wasn't really hurt at any moments in this fight. Obviously, he did get caught with a knockdown, but it was more of a flash knockdown with just a perfectly placed shot. But like I said, in those later rounds, Anderson was just stalking down Martin and jabbing him. But in the 9th round, Martin was able to land a nice left hand towards the end of it. But then the 10th round was a pretty quiet round. Anderson was trying to rile up the crowd. Not really much was going on. But then in the last 10 seconds, Charles Martin leaped in with a massive left hand that landed flush on the face of Jared Anderson and wobbled him pretty bad. Anderson's knees were buckling visibly. If you guys could after watching this video, go out and watch some of the highlights on this fight. I mean, Martin did hit him bad with a big left hand that wobbled him at the end of that 10th round, and that was the second round I actually gave to Charles Martin. So that overall accumulates to a 98-91 scorecard in favor of Jared Anderson. But if you did watch this fight, comment down below how you scored it. But with that being said, what is next for Jared Anderson? Now 15-0 with 14 KOs. Another very big rising heavyweight fought on this undercard. His name is Arslanbek Makhmudov. We could possibly see a clash between those two, but I don't know if they want to really jump to a big fight between two rising prospects like that. But, I mean, that's definitely an option for Anderson. And if Anderson doesn't fight Makhmudov or someone like that, he could actually follow through and have that fight with Zan Kosabutsky, who was his initial opponent as opposed to Martin. But, I mean, if not for even Kosabutsky, we could see we could see Jared Anderson take on someone around the level of like a top 25, top 20, top 15 in the heavyweight division. I mean, Martin himself is like top 20, top 15. But maybe we could see Anderson take on like a top 20, top 15 level like prospect in the heavyweight division. Someone else who's undefeated like a Kosabutsky, like I said before, or Makhmudov, like someone around that level, I think would be good for Anderson, considering he was able to beat Charles Martin, who's a pretty solid opponent. And you do have to be pretty solid to beat Charles Martin, because obviously, like I said before, he's a decent level, top 15 level heavyweight, in my opinion, has good power, former champion as well. But that goes into the question also, what's next for Charles Martin? He's now 29-4 with 1 draw and 26 knockouts. He's had a lot of big fights in these past few years, and he hasn't looked that bad in them. Like, even though he lost here against Anderson, didn't look that bad, hurt him, really made a guy who was touted to be the next best thing look a little less solid. He also dropped Luis Ortiz in his fight before that as well, twice, and was looking very good. He knocked out Gerald Washington, went 10 rounds with a prime Adam Kaunacki in a very close fight. So, I mean, he's been in some very big and exciting fights these past few years. And I think for Charles Martin, I don't think that he's going to really move down from here. I think he's just going to try and get the biggest fights he can. I don't really think he's going to have any. Maybe he might have a little fight in between this one, just like how he did when he fought Devin Vargas. But I think that Martin will maybe get a fight against someone like that, like a lower level guy, get an easy win, stay busy win. But then I think he'll get thrown in there against a decent level opponent again, someone like this, like Anderson, like a rising heavyweight, or someone else who's ranked in the top 15 to top 10. But I think he's going to get a pretty big fight nonetheless. So overall, Jared Anderson defeats Charles Martin, goes the distance for the first time in his career, going all 10 rounds, defeating Martin by unanimous decision. And yeah, that's really it. I'm MB Boxing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.